Millionaire left. A $0 tip. What the black single-mom waitress found under his plate changed everything. By the time Renee Johnson saw the money on the table, her feet were numb, her back was burning, and she could feel a headache forming just behind her eyes. Friday nights always did that to her. The restaurant was full, loud, heavy with perfume, cologne, and the simmering impatience of people who thought paying a premium for food gave them a license to be demanding. She stood at the edge of table 14, the quiet corner by the window, looking down at the neatly stacked cash. The total for the bill was $98.30. There were 5 20s, $100, $2 and change more than the bill. 0 tip. Her throat tightened. For a moment, Renee just stared at the notes, the green edges sharp against the white linen tablecloth. The man who'd been sitting there had already left. No lingering. No hesitation. No thank you. No, have a good night. No smile. Just the exact amount for the food. Nothing for her. She swallowed hard, the familiar sting of disappointment hitting her chest like a punch. She'd been counting on that tip. Not because she was greedy, not because she didn't know how to live on less, but because she had already mentally assigned that money to something real. Diapers for her 3-year-old daughter. Milk. Bus fare for the week. A portion of the overdue daycare bill she'd been promising to catch up on. $20 would have made a difference. 30 would have felt like breathing room. 0 felt like a verdict. Renee forced her hand not to tremble as she picked up the cash. She slid it smoothly into the black bill folder, the motion automatic after years of doing this, and reminded herself of the rule she'd created in her mind a long time ago. Do not cry on the restaurant floor. The world could see her smile. It could not see her break. She took a slow breath in through her nose, tasting garlic and butter and the faint sourness of spilled wine in the air, and let it out through her mouth. Behind her, someone laughed too loudly. Glasses clinked. The piano in the corner played something soft and familiar. Another table waved her over. "Excuse me, miss. We've been waiting on our drinks for a while." She turned, professional smile already back in place. "Of course, I'll check on those right away." She'd clear table 14 on her way back. She turned to reach for the plate, the one that still held a few untouched bites of salmon and cold asparagus, and something slipped. A small weight, a whisper of paper against ceramic. An envelope slid out from under the plate and landed near her hand. Renee froze. For a heartbeat, all the noise of the restaurant faded. The jazz, the conversations, the clatter from the kitchen. It all blurred into a distant hum. The envelope was thick. Not the flimsy white kind they used for receipts, but a cream-colored one, the kind people used for invitations or something important. Her name was written on the front in careful, deliberate handwriting. Renee. She glanced around instinctively, as if someone might leap out and say, "Just kidding, that's not for you." But no one was looking at her. Table 10 was arguing about who was paying. Table 7 was taking selfies with their dessert. The bar was busy. Her co-workers were buried under orders. The man from table 14 was gone. She picked up the envelope. Her heart started pounding in a way that had nothing to do with the rush of the shift. For a moment, she considered slipping it straight into her pocket and opening it at home, in the quiet of her tiny living room, when Maya was asleep on the couch beside her. But something about the weight of it, the way her name looked on the front, neat and sure, wouldn't let her wait. She slid a finger under the flap and opened it. Inside was a folded piece of cardstock with writing in the same neat, decisive script. She pulled it out and read, "I wanted to see who you were when you thought no one was watching." Her hands began to shake. Behind the card, something else was tucked. Another piece of paper. Bigger. Thicker. She unfolded it, her fingers clumsy with nerves. A certified check, Made out to Renee Johnson. She saw the bank logo first, the official stamp, the way the light caught the watermarks. Her eyes scanned the lines, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. Then she saw the amount. Her breath caught in her throat. The room seemed to tilt. She grabbed the back of the chair with her free hand to steady herself, clutching the check like it might evaporate if she loosened her grip. This couldn't be real. It had to be a mistake. People did not leave that kind of money under plates, in corner tables, in restaurants like this. Not for women like her. Not for single moms juggling overdue bills and daycare and rent in a cramped 2-bedroom with peeling paint and a leaky faucet. Before she could even form the words to make sense of what she held, a calm, familiar voice spoke behind her. "You passed." Renee turned. The man from table 14 stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, his expression no longer unreadable. There was something in his eyes now. Not coldness, not indifference. Something like quiet approval. Something like respect. He nodded once toward the envelope in her hand. "I'm not just a customer," he said, his voice low but clear even in the noise of the restaurant. "I'm the owner of this place, and tonight I needed to know who deserved more than just a tip." Renee's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't do anything special," she whispered. He smiled, small but genuine. "That's exactly why it matters. Before we go deeper into what happened that night, do something for yourself and for this channel. Take a second and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. It helps me understand who I'm telling these stories to. And if you've ever worked a job where every small tip, every small kindness made a real difference, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss these emotional life stories. Now, let's go back to where Renee's day really began. It started, like most of her days, with an alarm that felt like an insult. 5:12 a.m. Renee rolled over and slapped her phone screen until the noise stopped. For a moment, she lay there in the half-dark, staring at the cracked ceiling above her bed, trying to remember what day it was. Friday. Rent due in 3 days. 5 messages from the electric company sitting unread in her email. Daycare texting her yesterday. "We understand, but we really need that payment by Monday." She closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. Then she sat up. The room was small, barely big enough for the bed and a narrow dresser. A single window looked out onto the brick wall of the neighboring building. The paint on the walls was off-white, the kind of color landlords chose because it hid dirt and indifference. Renee swung her legs over the side of the bed and stretched, feeling the ache in her back from last night's shift. Her feet touched the cold floor. She'd meant to buy a rug for this room months ago, but rugs were not diapers and rent, so the floor stayed bare. She padded quietly down the short hallway to the other bedroom. The nightlight in the corner cast a soft glow over the small space. A tiny bed with pink sheets, a stuffed giraffe on the floor, a pile of picture books on the nightstand. Maya was asleep on her stomach, arms sprawled over the covers, curls pressed flat on one side of her head. Her little mouth was open, breath soft and even. Renee leaned against the doorframe for a long moment, watching her daughter sleep. 3 years old. 3 years of being someone's entire world. 3 years of being simultaneously grateful and terrified every single day. "Morning, baby," she whispered, though she knew Maya couldn't hear her yet. "Mama's gonna make us breakfast, okay?" She closed the door gently and walked to the kitchen. Calling it a kitchen was generous. It was more of a corner with appliances attached to the living room. The counters were old and chipped. The fridge hummed louder than necessary, a reminder it was older than she was. But everything was clean. That was non-negotiable. Growing up, her mother had always said, "We may not have much, but we are not going to live in a mess." Renee opened the fridge and mentally counted what was left. 1/2 gallon of milk, 3 eggs, a container with the last of the leftover rice from 2 nights ago, one lonely apple. She pulled the milk and eggs out and checked the bank app on her phone. Balance, $32.11. Tips from last night already spent in her head before they'd even hit her account. She cracked 2 eggs into a bowl, whisked them with a splash of milk, and put a pan on the stove. Maya loved scrambled eggs. If she ate a good breakfast, maybe she wouldn't ask for a treat after daycare. Maybe. While the eggs cooked, Renee pulled out her uniform from the chair near the couch. Black slacks, white button-down, black apron, all freshly washed yesterday at the laundromat, hung to dry at home because the dryer there cost extra she didn't have. She didn't own many clothes that weren't for work. 2 pairs of jeans, 3 t-shirts, 1 dress that lived in the back of her closet, worn twice in 5 years. But her uniform was always pressed, always clean. In fine dining, appearances mattered. People judged you by how crisp your shirt was, long before they cared about how kind you were. "Mommy?" The small, sleepy voice drifted from the hallway. Renee turned to see Maya standing there, rubbing her eyes with a fist, her curls sticking out at every angle. She wore the unicorn pajamas she refused to outgrow, even though the pants were getting a little short. "Hey, sunshine," Renee said, smiling in a way that felt more real than any smile she gave customers. "Come here." Maya padded over on bare feet and climbed onto one of the mismatched chairs at the small table that served as both dining area and bill-paying station. "What we having?" she asked, peering curiously at the pan. "Eggs," Renee said. "And we've got an apple. You want some toast too?" Maya considered. "Can I have the apple and toast and eggs?" "With manners like that you can," Renee said, chuckling. "Yes, you can." She sliced the apple into thin wedges, toasted 2 slices of the cheapest wheat bread she'd found at the discount grocery store, and divided the eggs between 2 plates. Maya got more. She always got more. They sat down together. For a few minutes, it was just them and the morning light sneaking in through the blinds, turning the tiny dining table into something almost gentle. "Mama?" Maya said around a mouthful of egg. "Yes, baby. Are you going to work at the big restaurant again?" "Yes, I am." "Can I come with you?" Renee smiled, even as her chest squeezed. "I wish you could. But little girls have to go to daycare and make friends and play with toys. Grown-ups have to go to work and make money so we can buy those toys." Maya nodded like this made perfect sense. "I can help. I can carry plates." "Maybe one day," Renee said softly. "Not yet." After breakfast, it was the race against the clock. Renee rinsed the dishes and stacked them neatly in the sink, wiped Maya's face with a damp cloth, changed her into leggings and a small sweater that had been a gift from a neighbor at Christmas, did her hair in 2 puffs, hands moving with practiced speed. Then the daycare bag, change of clothes, a pack of wipes, the last of the pull-ups. She counted them. 4. She needed to buy more by Monday. Her own routine took 5 minutes, after she'd brushed Maya's teeth. She brushed her own, washed her face in the bathroom sink, and pulled her hair into a low bun. The mirror above the sink was slightly cracked at the corner, but it still showed her what she already knew. Dark circles under her eyes, skin that had lost some of its youthful softness, replaced by the faint lines of constant worry. But her eyes were still her mother's eyes. Soft, determined, tired, but not broken. She buttoned her white shirt, smoothed the front, and tied her black apron around her waist. The apron pockets were already stocked. Order pad, 2 pens, a small bottle of hand sanitizer, a folded bandage for blisters that were already forming on her heel. Renee grabbed her keys, her phone, and the envelope of cash she kept hidden in the freezer behind a bag of frozen peas. Her emergency stash, $57. She hesitated, then took 20 out. Daycare needed something today. She stuffed the 20 into her wallet and put the rest back. "You ready, Maya?" she called. "Ready!" Maya yelled from the door, already wearing her small backpack, her shoes on the wrong feet. Renee crouched and fixed the shoes, kissing each of her daughter's toes through the worn fabric. They walked down the 2 flights of stairs together, Renee holding Maya's hand. The hallway smelled faintly of fried onions and bleach. A neighbor's TV blared through the thin walls. Outside, the morning air was crisp, the kind of cool that hinted at a warm day ahead. They waited at the bus stop together, Maya leaning against her leg. "Can we get snacks?" Maya asked, spotting the corner store across the street. "Not today, baby," Renee said gently. "But maybe next week." "You always say next week," Maya said, pouting. Renee swallowed. "I know. I'm trying." The bus ride to daycare took 15 minutes. Renee used the time to check her messages, scrolling through her phone with her thumb. No new texts from Maya's father. Not that she expected any. He'd left when she was 4 months pregnant and sent exactly 3 messages since. None of them useful. She'd stopped expecting him to show up a long time ago. There was a new email from the utility company. "Final notice!" the subject line screamed. She deleted it. What was she supposed to do? Magic money out of air? At the daycare, Miss Patricia greeted them with a warm smile. "Morning, Renee." "Morning, Miss Maya." "Morning," Maya chirped, running to hang her tiny backpack on her hook. Miss Patricia waited until Maya was out of earshot before speaking. "Renee, I hate to bring it up again, but I know," Renee said quickly. "I'm behind. I'm so sorry. I have a double shift tomorrow. I'll bring something on Monday, I promise." Miss Patricia sighed, not unkindly. "I know you're trying, and I'm going to give you as much time as I can. But the center has bills, too." "I understand," Renee said. Shame burned her throat. "I'll figure it out. Thank you for being patient." She kissed Maya's forehead, told her she loved her, and walked out, feeling the now familiar mix of love and failure. By the time Renee reached the restaurant, Meridian Heights, she had put all of that into a mental box and shoved it onto a shelf. There was no room for guilt on the floor. No space for personal problems between table numbers and drink orders. And, yes, of course, I'll get that right away. Meridian Heights sat on a busy downtown street, all glass and steel from the outside, all understated luxury inside. It was the kind of place people reserved for anniversaries, promotions, and dates they wanted to impress on. White tablecloths, heavy cutlery, wine glasses that caught the light like crystal. "Morning, Renee," Marco, the manager, called as she walked in through the staff entrance. "Morning, Marco," she said, forcing her shoulders back. "What's it looking like tonight?" "Fully booked from 7 to 10, he said, glancing at his clipboard. "We've got a corporate group at table 8, a birthday at table 10, and table 14 is reserved for a single." "A single?" Renee asked. "For a Friday night?" "Yeah. Guy called in last week, specifically requested it." Marco shrugged. "Big spender. Good for you if he's in your section." "I'll take it," she said. She changed into her non-scuffed shoes in the small employee locker room, tied her apron tighter, and joined the pre-shift meeting. The chef rattled off specials: pan-seared salmon, herb-crusted lamb, truffle risotto. The bartender mentioned the new cocktail they were pushing. Marco reminded everyone to upsell dessert and not linger too long at tables because of the wait list. Then they were dismissed, and the night began in earnest. By 7, the restaurant was full. By 8, Renee was moving on muscle memory alone. "Can I get another glass of the Cabernet?" "Yes, of course." "Excuse me, we've been waiting on bread." "I'll bring that right out." "This isn't what I ordered." "I'm so sorry. Let me fix that for you. She glided between tables, her smile automatic, her voice calm. Inside, she kept a running tally. Table 3. Family of 4. Kids making a mess with crayons. Good tip, probably. The parents had that tired but generous look. Table 5. Date night. Second bottle of wine. Laughing too loud. They'd tip okay if the night went well. Not much if it didn't. Table 9. Businessman alone, staring at his phone. Might leave cash. Might leave nothing. And then there was table 14. By the window. He arrived at 7:42. Renee saw him as she was dropping a drink at table 7. Tall, maybe late 30s. Dark hair, cut neatly, clean-shaven. His suit was dark, well-fitted. The kind that didn't scream labels but whispered money. His shoes were polished but slightly worn at the toe. His watch simple but expensive. He stood at the host stand, speaking quietly to Lily, the evening hostess. Lily nodded and led him toward the table in the corner, the one that overlooked the street. As he sat, he scanned the room once, not in a hungry way, but with a kind of quiet awareness. His eyes landed on Renee for a fraction of a second, and she felt a small jolt. Then he looked away. "Renee, table 14 is yours," Marco said, appearing at her elbow, as if reading her mind. "Guy's name is David Morrison. He's in our system. Comes in maybe twice a year. Always alone. Always tips well, from what I remember." "Got it," Renee said, taking a breath. She grabbed a water pitcher and a pre-folded napkin and walked over. Showtime. "Good evening," she said, her voice warm but professional. "Welcome to Meridian Heights. My name is Renee. I'll be taking care of you tonight." Up close, he looked calmer than most of the people who walked in here. There was a stillness to him, like he was comfortable in his own skin. His eyes were a gray she rarely saw, a soft, stormy color that seemed to notice everything and reveal nothing. "Good evening," he said. "Can I start you off with some water?" she asked. "Yes, thank you." She poured, her hand steady. "Have you dined with us before?" "A few times," he said. "It's been a while." "Well, welcome back," Renee replied. "We've got some great specials tonight if you'd like to hear them." He nodded, and she went through the list, describing each dish the way the chef had trained them to. Detailed but not over the top, highlighting flavors without sounding like a cooking show. "I'll have the salmon," he said when she finished. "No starter. Just the main. And water is fine." "Of course," she said. "Would you like to see a wine list?" "Not tonight." "Very well. I'll put that order in for you. If you need anything at all, just let me know." He nodded again. That was it. No small talk. No asking for her name again so he could use it too much. No flirting. Just calm, steady acknowledgement. She'd take calm any night. She punched his order into the POS system and moved on to her other tables. Every time she glanced toward 14, he was either watching the room or looking out the window. His phone stayed on the table, screen down. He didn't scroll endlessly like most people. When she brought his salmon, he thanked her quietly. She checked back after a few minutes, like they were required to do. "How is everything tasting?" she asked. He'd only eaten 2 bites. "It's fine," he said. Renee looked at the plate. The fish was cooked perfectly. The asparagus still bright green. The potatoes crisped at the edges. "If it's not to your liking, I can have the kitchen make you something else." "No, it's all right." He paused, considering her. "I'm just not very hungry tonight." "Okay," she said. "If you change your mind, let me know. We can always box it up for you to take home." He nodded, and she moved on. But something about that interaction stuck with her. People here complained about everything. Too salty, too bland, too hot, too cold. He'd clearly left most of his food, but he wasn't blaming anyone. He wasn't performing dissatisfaction the way some did. He was just not hungry. She wondered why. She didn't have time to dwell on it. Table 10's birthday dessert came out with a sparkler and loud applause. Table 3 needed extra napkins. Table 5's date spilled red wine on her white blouse, and Renee scrambled to bring club soda and apologize, even though it wasn't her fault. Still, every time she passed table 14, she checked without making it obvious. He didn't flag her down, didn't ask for anything. Just sat, ate a few more bites, drank water, and then finally pushed his plate aside. An hour passed. Then he signaled for the check with a small nod. Renee brought it. "Take your time," she said. "No rush." He took out his wallet, placed cash in the folder, closed it, and stood. "Thank you," he said. "You're welcome," she replied automatically. He left. No lingering, no looking back. Just like that. She finished dropping plates at another table, then returned to 14 to clear it, and saw the stack of bills that made her stomach drop. 0 tip. And then, a moment later, the envelope, her name, the note, the check, and his voice. "You passed." Now, standing with her heart hammering and her eyes wet, Renee looked at the man she'd just served like he was any other quiet Friday night customer. He wasn't. He watched her carefully, not in a predatory way, not with pity, but with the focused attention of someone who made big decisions for a living and took them seriously. "You might want to sit down," he said gently. Renee sank into the chair opposite his former seat without thinking. Her knees felt like they might give out otherwise. She held up the check with shaky fingers. "Is this real?" "Yes," he said. "It says—" She looked again at the number. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "It says $50,000. "It does," he said. I don't understand." The words came out raw. "I just did my job." He nodded slowly. "Exactly." She stared at him. He slipped his hands out of his pockets and leaned forward slightly, elbows on the table, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "I came in tonight to watch," he said, "not just to eat. I wanted to see how my staff treated people when they didn't know who I was, when they thought I was just another one of them. I do this now and then, quietly. No announcements, no cameras, no fancy speeches." You're the owner?" Renee asked. "One of them," he said. "My name is David Morrison. I started this restaurant 10 years ago with a partner. We've grown since then. 17 locations now, across 3 states. Meridian Heights is special to me, though. It was my first." Renee searched her memory. She'd heard the name. It was on the company email signature, on the documents in the manager's office. But she'd never expected to see the man behind it sitting in her section, eating salmon and drinking water. "I left you no tip on purpose," he said, and something in his eyes flickered, regret mixed with resolve. "Because I wanted to see what you did when you were disappointed, when it looked like all your effort didn't pay off, when it would have been so easy to slam the plates down, roll your eyes, complain to your coworkers." "I wouldn't do that," Renee said automatically, almost offended. "I know," he replied. "That's my point." She thought of how she'd felt when she saw the 0, the hurt, the frustration, the fatigue. And then she thought of what she'd done. She'd taken a breath. She'd picked up the money. She'd reminded herself not to cry. She'd gone on to the next table. "I watched you the whole time," David said. "You treated every person who sat in your section with the same level of care. You noticed when someone's water was low and refilled it without being asked. You offered to replace my meal even though I wasn't complaining. You apologized to a customer for a mistake that wasn't yours and fixed it anyway. You did all of that without knowing anyone important was watching." Renee wiped quickly at her eyes, embarrassed. That's my job." "Maybe," he said, "but not everyone does it like you do." She looked down at the check again. $50,000. It might as well have been $5 million for how foreign it felt in her hands. "You don't even know me," she whispered. "You don't know what I've done or haven't done. You don't know if I deserve this." David studied her for a long moment. "I know more than you think," he said softly. "I know you've been with Meridian Heights for 3 years. No write-ups, no customer complaints. I know you've picked up extra shifts when the restaurant was short-staffed. I know you've stayed late to help close even when it wasn't your turn." Renee blinked. "How do you know that?" "I read the logs," he said simply. "I pay attention." He tilted his head slightly. "I also know you have a 3-year-old daughter. Maya, right?" Renee's eyes widened. "How?" "I hear things," he said. "You've mentioned her a few times on the floor. Not in a way that burdens customers, just little details. I've heard you tell coworkers you had to leave on time to pick her up from daycare. I've heard you say no to going out after shifts because you had to be home with her." Heat rose in Renee's cheeks. She'd always tried to keep her personal life separate from work, but she supposed nothing stayed completely hidden in a place where everyone was packed in together, surviving side by side. "I grew up watching my mother do what you're doing," David said quietly. "Waitressing, working double shifts, raising me alone after my father left, smiling through exhaustion, hoping that if she was kind enough, if she worked hard enough, life would give her a break." He paused, his gaze distant for a moment, like he was seeing a different restaurant from a different decade. "Most of the time it didn't," he said. "She died before she got to see any of this." He gestured vaguely around the restaurant. "Before she saw me build something that meant she didn't have to worry anymore." "I'm sorry," Renee whispered. "She was the best woman I've ever known," he said simply. "She deserved so much more than she got." He looked at the check in her hands. "I can't go back and fix her story, but I can show up in someone else's." Renee swallowed hard. "You don't owe me anything," she said. "You gave me a job. That's already more than most." David shook his head. "I didn't give you a job. You earned that job. You've kept it because you show up every day and do it well. This," he nodded at the check, "is me saying I see that. I see you." The words hit her harder than the money. I see you. She hadn't realized how much she'd been craving that. Not just from customers. Not just from a manager who occasionally said, "Good job," in passing. But from someone who understood what it meant to carry the weight she carried, to be responsible for a small life, to juggle bills and schedules and worry like plates on sticks, hoping none of them fell. Renee took a shaky breath. "What am I supposed to do with this?" she asked, her voice breaking. "I mean, $50,000? That's everything." "What do you want to do with it?" David asked gently. She opened her mouth, then closed it. What did she want? Her entire life for the past 3 years had been about what she needed to do. She needed to pay rent, needed to keep the lights on, needed to make sure Maya had food and clothes and a bed to sleep in. Wants had been pushed so far down the list they may as well not exist. Once she'd wanted to go back to school. Once she'd pictured herself in scrubs, working in a hospital, taking care of people, making enough to breathe. But that had been before diapers and daycare and 12-hour shifts. She shook her head. "I don't even know anymore." "That's okay," David said. "You don't have to know right now. You don't have to make any decisions tonight. The money is yours. No strings, no conditions." Her eyes snapped up. "No strings?" "No strings," he repeated. "You can use it to pay off debts, to move to a better apartment, to go back to school, to take a month off and sleep. Whatever you need, whatever you want." Renee let out a strangled laugh at "take a month off and sleep." The idea felt so foreign it was almost funny. "There is one more thing, though," David added, "and I'm not saying this is what you should do, but it's an option. One I think you're more than capable of." She waited, heart pounding in a new way. "I'm opening a new restaurant in 6 months," he said. "Different concept, same standards. And I'm looking for someone to train as a floor manager. Someone who understands service from the ground up. Someone I can trust with my name on the door." Renee's eyes widened. "Me?" "You," he said simply. I don't have a degree," she stammered. "I've never managed anything. I barely manage my own life." He smiled, a small spark of amusement crossing his features. "You manage a 3-year-old, a full-time job, and a stack of bills that would crush most people. I'd say you have more management experience than half the people with degrees." She shook her head, overwhelmed. "I'm just a waitress." His expression sobered. "You are not just anything, Renee." The way he said her name made her chest tighten. "You are a single mother who has kept a small human alive and loved for 3 years on a salary that barely covers basics. You are a professional who shows up on time, does your job, and goes beyond what's asked without complaining. You are someone who treated a quiet man in the corner with the same respect you gave the loud birthday party across the room, even when you thought that quiet man stiffed you on a tip." He paused. "You are exactly the kind of person I want representing my business." Renee could feel the tears coming again. She blinked fast, not wanting to break down in the middle of the dining room. "I don't know if I can do that," she whispered. "I don't know if I'm enough." "What you showed me tonight," David said, "is that you are." She looked at the check again. $50,000. She thought of the daycare balance, the electric bill, the rent, the bus fares, the little notebook in her dresser drawer where she sometimes wrote, "nursing school," and then crossed it out again because it felt stupid to dream. "Can I think about it?" she asked, clutching the check to her chest. "Of course," he said. "I would be worried if you didn't." He slid a small, simple business card across the table. "Call me when you're ready to talk about it," he said. "Or if you have questions. Or if you just need someone to walk through the options with you." She picked up the card. It was heavy, textured cardstock. His name, a phone number, an email address. No title. He didn't need one. "I should let you get back to your work," he added. "I've already taken up too much of your time." You just changed my life," Renee said. "You can take all the time you want." He smiled softly. "Sometimes all it takes to change someone's life is noticing what they've been doing all along." He stood. "You passed, Renee, not because you did something extraordinary tonight, but because you did what you always do. Be yourself." With that, he turned and walked away, slipping through the restaurant toward the front, blending into the crowd of well-dressed diners leaving and arriving. Renee sat there for a full minute, dazed. Then table 3 waved. "Excuse me, can we get our check?" Her life had just been flipped on its axis, but the table still needed closing. She stood, wiped her face quickly with the back of her hand, tucked the check and card safely into her apron pocket, and forced her body to move. One more hour. She could get through one more hour. She took a deep breath and stepped back into the flow of the restaurant, serving dessert with the quiet knowledge that nothing would ever be quite the same again. If someone ever made you feel seen, not for what you do, but for who you are, hold on to that feeling. And if you're still waiting for that person, don't assume they'll show up in the way you expect. Sometimes they're sitting at table 14, watching how you carry yourself when you think no one notices. If this first part of Renee's story is touching you, don't forget to hit like so more people can find it. Make sure you're subscribed and the notifications are on, because in the next part, we're going to dive into what happens after she leaves the restaurant, how she tells her daughter, and the impossible decisions she has to make when life finally gives her options instead of demands. Here's part 2 of the script, continuing seamlessly from where we stopped. I'll keep building depth, emotion, and pacing toward your 2-hour target. No headings, just pure narrative Jabasa voiceover style. Renee finished the shift on muscle and adrenaline. She dropped checks, wiped tables, carried steaming plates and heavy trays, all while the weight of that certified check sat against her hip like a second heart beating. Once, during a lull, she ducked into the service station by the bar and slipped the check out just to make sure it was still real. The numbers didn't change. The ink didn't vanish. $50,000 stayed exactly where it was printed. "Hey, you okay?" Lisa, another server, asked as she passed. "You look like you just saw a ghost." Renee almost laughed. "Something like that." "What happened at 14? I saw that guy talking to you forever," Lisa pressed. "He one of those weirdos complaining?" Renee opened her mouth, then closed it. She thought of saying, "He's the owner, and he just gave me a check that could change my life." But people talked in restaurants. Secrets didn't stay secret, and she didn't know yet what any of this meant. "He was fine," she said instead. "Just taking his time." "Well, lucky you. I got the birthday table from hell," Lisa groaned, jerking her thumb toward a group of drunk 20-somethings. "If one more of them asks for a free shot because it's my birthday." "I'm throwing someone into the dessert case." Renee smiled, tucked the check back into her apron, and went to run another credit card. At 11:30, the last table paid and left. By midnight, the restaurant was quiet. The lights dimmed, the smell of food replaced by the sharp, clean scent of disinfectant and lemon polish as the closing crew did their work. Renee stayed to help roll silverware and reset tables. It was habit, and there was something calming about the routine. Fold, tuck, stack. Fold, tuck, stack. Her mind, however, was anything but calm. $50,000. An offer for a management position. A man who said he saw her. When Marco finally said, "All right, guys, that's it. Go home. Get some sleep," she felt her entire body sag with relief. In the locker room, she changed out of her uniform and into her jeans and hoodie. She hesitated for a second, then transferred the check and David's card from her apron pocket into her wallet, sliding them into the hidden compartment she usually used for emergency cash. She couldn't risk leaving that check at work, or dropping it, or losing it. The idea made her feel physically ill. Lisa bumped her shoulder as they walked out together toward the back door. "Double tomorrow?" "Yeah," Renee said. "Lunch and dinner." "You're a machine," Lisa muttered. "I don't know how you do it." Renee thought of Maya's face and the final notice in her email inbox. "I don't have a choice," she said softly. Outside, the air had turned chilly. The city at midnight was a different animal than during the day. Quieter on some streets, louder on others. Neon signs flickered. Cars idled. A couple arguing by a parked SUV went silent as the restaurant staff spilled out the back door. "You need a ride?" one of the line cooks called. "I'm good," Renee said, waving. Bus fare was cheaper, and tonight she trusted no one but public transit to get her and that check home. She walked to the bus stop, her steps slower than in the morning. Her legs felt heavy, but her mind was racing. What do you even do with $50,000? Pay off everything, a voice in her head said immediately. Catch up on all the bills. Get current on daycare. Clear the credit card you've been using for emergencies that aren't really emergencies, just gaps big enough to swallow you. Move, another voice added, out of the apartment with the leaky ceiling and the weird smell in the hallway. Somewhere safer for Maya, somewhere with a park nearby. Maybe a second bedroom big enough for her little girl to have a real bed and not just a hand-me-down mattress on a thrift store frame. School, a third voice whispered, the softest, most fragile one. Nursing. The dream you crossed out 100 times on that piece of paper in your drawer. The bus arrived with a squeal of brakes. Renee climbed on, swiped her pass, and found a seat by the window. The city rolled by in streaks of light. A couple laughing outside a bar. A man in a hoodie pushing a grocery cart full of cans. A group of teenagers clustered around a street performer. Renee stared at her reflection in the bus window, superimposed over the city lights. "You are not dreaming," she murmured to herself. "This happened. He gave it to you. It's real." The bus jolted, and she clutched her purse tighter, suddenly aware of how vulnerable she was carrying something so valuable in a bag that cost $12 from a discount store. At her stop, she got off and walked the 3 blocks to her apartment building, every shadow looking deeper than usual, every footstep behind her making her shoulders tense. She wasn't normally this jumpy walking home, but she'd never done it with a certified check worth more than her yearly income in her wallet. She double-checked the locks when she got inside. Once. Twice. Then she leaned back against the door and let out a long, shaky breath. The apartment was dark and quiet, except for the soft hum of the fridge. Maya wasn't there. She'd spent the night at Miss Patricia's, one of the rare evenings Renee had had to pay extra for late care because of a double shift. She checked her phone. A text from Miss Patricia at 9:30 p.m. Maya fell asleep watching cartoons. "She's fine. Pick her up any time in the morning." Guilt pricked at Renee's heart. She hated leaving her daughter overnight, even with someone she trusted. But some shifts you couldn't give up, not when money was what it was. Tonight, for the first time, she wondered if that might change. She sank onto the sagging couch, kicked her shoes off, and pulled the check and card back out. The check felt heavier now. She traced the numbers with her thumb. 50,000, she whispered. 50,000. She opened her banking app, looked at the balance, and laughed a little hysterically. $32.11. One wrong move, one unexpected bill, and everything fell apart. This check was bigger than catching up. It was leaping ahead. Her eyes drifted to the small drawer of the cheap side table. She pulled it open. Inside was a worn spiral notebook, the edges of the pages bent and soft. She flipped it open. Halfway through, on a page with faint smudges where her fingers had rested too long, 4 letters were written in her neat handwriting. "RN? Registered nurse." Then, a scribble through it, as if she'd tried to erase the thought. Underneath, in smaller letters, "Maybe in another life." Renee stared at it until her vision blurred. She had always been good with people, calm during emergencies. The one relatives called when someone got sick, when someone needed to be taken to the hospital, when someone needed forms filled out at the clinic. Her mother had once said she had nurse hands, steady, gentle, sure. After high school, there had been a plan. Community college, nursing prerequisites, part-time job until she could get into a program. Then her mother got sick. Then her mother died. Then there were funeral costs, and grief, and bills, and the slow, numbing crawl into survival mode. Then there was a man who said all the right things, who left when "we're pregnant" became "I'm pregnant." She'd taken the server job at Meridian Heights because the tips were good and the hours were steady. School had been later, then someday, then never mind. Now, never mind, stared back at her from the notebook like a challenge. Her phone buzzed. Rachel. Of course, Rachel. Renee wiped her eyes and answered. "Hey, you still awake?" Rachel's familiar voice wrapped around her like a soft blanket, and a slap at the same time. Warm but honest. "Yeah. How was the shift? You sound weird," Renee almost said, It was fine. The default answer. The one that kept people from asking too many questions. Instead, the dam broke. "Rach," she said, her voice shaking. Something happened. She told her everything, from the 0 tip to the envelope, the note, the check, David's reveal, his offer. Rachel didn't interrupt once. When Renee finally stopped talking, there was a long silence. "This is not a joke," Rachel said slowly. "Because if you're messing with me right now, this is a very specific, very cruel kind of joke." "It's not a joke," Renee said. "I'm holding the check in my hand." "Send me a picture." Renee snapped a photo and sent it. 10 seconds later. "Holy shit." "Right?" Renee whispered. $50,000, Rachel said, as if saying it out loud would make it more real. "And he offered you a management job?" "Yes." "And he's the owner? Like actual owner? "Yes." Rachel went quiet again. "Okay," she finally said. "First things first. You are not allowed to say you did nothing special ever again. You being you is what got you this. Your work, your kindness, your stubborn refusal to turn bitter despite everything. That's not nothing special. That's rare." Renee felt tears burning again. He said that's why it mattered. That I didn't change when I thought no one important was watching. "Well, guess what?" Rachel said. "There was someone important watching, and he had a bank account with more zeros than my student loans." Despite herself, Renee snorted. "Second," Rachel continued, more serious, "do not rush this. Don't walk into your job tomorrow and be like, 'I quit, bitches,' on the strength of one check and a conversation. Breathe. Think. Talk to a financial advisor. Talk to a lawyer if you need to. Make sure the check is legit, which I'm sure it is. But we're women. We verify." "I know," Renee said. I don't even know where to start." "You start by sleeping," Rachel said firmly. "Then tomorrow, after you pick up Maya, you deposit that check. Not at an ATM, inside, with a human. You tell them you want it held until it clears. You don't spend a single cent until the bank confirms the funds are real." "What if they treat me weird?" Renee asked. "What if they look at my account and think, 'What is she doing with this?'" "They will," Rachel said bluntly. "And who cares? Let them think whatever. They're not paying your bills. They're punching a clock, too." Renee let that sit. "Then," Rachel went on, "you call David. Set up a proper meeting somewhere that's not between table 14 and a stack of dirty dishes. Ask questions. Salary, hours, expectations, support, training, childcare. Because you are not sacrificing seeing your daughter for a job that demands your soul." "What about school?" Renee whispered. He said I could use it for nursing if I wanted." "Then that's part of the conversation," Rachel said. "Is there a way to do both, work and school? Or does one come first? What makes sense for you and Maya, not for anyone else's idea of what you should do?" The idea of having options felt almost intoxicating. For years, decisions had been made by pressure, not preference. The bill decides. The due date decides. The lack of money decides. Now, for once, she could decide. "I'm scared," Renee admitted. "I'd be worried if you weren't," Rachel said. "But listen to me carefully. You are not an accident. You are not a pity case. This man did not throw a dart at a map and land on you. He saw you. He made a deliberate choice to invest in you. That means something. So don't let fear make this smaller than it is." Renee nodded, even though Rachel couldn't see her. "You know what I keep thinking about?" Rachel added. "All those nights we talked about winning the lottery, remember? And you would always say, 'I don't need 100 million, just enough to breathe. Just enough to not panic every time the phone rings.'" "I remember," Renee said softly. Well, Rachel said, this isn't a lottery ticket, it's better. Because it came with recognition, with an opportunity, with someone believing in you. That's more powerful than random numbers. Renee smiled through her tears. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just never listen, Rachel said lightly. Now go to bed. Tomorrow is going to be a very big day. After they hung up, the apartment felt quieter than before. Renee placed the check back in its envelope, tucked it into her wallet, and then slid the wallet under her pillow. It made her feel a little ridiculous, but it also made her feel safe. If someone was going to take this from her, they'd have to go through her first. She lay down, turned off the light, and stared at the dark ceiling. God, she whispered into the quiet. I don't know what this is. I don't know if this is from you or just life being weird. But if this is a door, please help me not be too scared to walk through it. Please help me not mess it up. And please let me do right by Maya with this. For the first time in a long time, she fell asleep quickly. No tossing, no turning. Just exhaustion and a strange, fragile hope finally weighing her down enough to rest. The next morning, she woke up before her alarm. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, painting lines on the wall. For a second, she panicked. The check. Her hand flew under her pillow. It was still there. She exhaled, half laughing at herself. Maya's giggles floated in from the front door as she fumbled with the keys. Renee sprang up and opened it. Mama! Maya launched herself into her arms, almost knocking her over. Renee lifted her, breathing in the smell of baby shampoo and crayons. Hey, princess, she murmured, burying her face in her daughter's curls. Did you have fun? We played with blocks, and I drawed a cat, Maya said proudly. Drew, Miss Patricia corrected gently from the doorway, smiling. She drew a cat that looked more like a potato, but we all clapped. Thank you, Renee said earnestly. For last night. For everything. Miss Patricia waved a hand. You know I love this child. She's no trouble. Slept through the night like a champ. Renee hesitated. I can pay something today. Not all, but... Honey, Miss Patricia said, peering at her face. You look different. Something happen? Renee considered. Then she said, Can you come in for a minute? She told the story again, this time in the small kitchen with Maya, coloring at the table, humming to herself. By the time she finished, Miss Patricia's eyes were wide. Lord have mercy, she said softly. You hear about things like that, but you never think it'll happen to someone you know. I'm still not sure it happened to me, Renee admitted. Miss Patricia shook her head slowly. No, that tracks. I've watched you for 3 years, Renee, working yourself to the bone, showing up for this little girl no matter how tired you are, putting your pride aside to ask for more time on payments instead of just disappearing. Tears pricked Renee's eyes again. You did everything you could with what little you had, Miss Patricia continued. So when something big finally shows up at your door, don't you dare act like you didn't earn it. Renee sniffed, laughed. You sound like Rachel. Rachel sounds like a smart woman, Miss Patricia said. Now listen. You go to that bank. You deposit that check. You ask all the questions you need. And when that money hits, you come see me. We're going to sit down with a piece of paper and write out priorities. Rent. Bills. A little savings. Then we'll talk dreams. Dreams, Renee repeated. The word felt foreign on her tongue. I don't even know where to start. You start with one, Miss Patricia said. You don't have to solve your whole life in one weekend, but you can take one step towards something that isn't just surviving. After she left, Renee got herself and Maya dressed and headed to the bank. It was one of those glass front branches downtown, all polished floors and air-conditioned cool. She felt out of place in her Target jeans and thrift store hoodie, but she held her head high. She'd been here before. Deposited tips, cashed her paycheck, argued over overdraft fees. This time, she took a number and waited. When it was her turn, she approached the counter with her wallet held carefully in both hands. "Good morning," the teller said brightly. She was young, mid-20s maybe, with a smooth bob and perfect eyeliner. Her name tag read, Kendra. "Morning," Renee said. I need to deposit a check, a certified check." "Sure," Kendra said. "We can do that. Can I see it?" Renee slid the envelope across, her heart pounding. Kendra unfolded it, her professional smile flickering for a fraction of a second when she saw the amount. Then she smoothed her expression back into neutral. "Okay," she said, tapping at her keyboard. "This is a large deposit for this account, so it may take a few business days to clear. But once it does, the funds will be fully available to you. Do you want any of it in cash today, or all deposited?" "All deposited," Renee said quickly. The idea of walking out with that much money in her purse made her feel faint. "Got it," Kendra said. "We'll give you a receipt showing the pending deposit. You'll get a notification when it clears." "Is there anything I'm supposed to do?" Renee asked. "Special? With something like this?" Kendra paused. For a moment, the bank mask slipped, and she looked at Renee, woman to woman, not teller to customer. "I'm not a financial advisor," she said carefully. "But if I were in your shoes, I'd breathe. Then I'd find one. Someone who can help you make a plan so this doesn't just disappear on bills and you're back where you started in 6 months." "That makes sense," Renee said softly. Kendra printed the receipt and slid it back to her. "Congratulations," she added quietly. "Whatever this is from, it's a big deal. I hope it helps you do something good for yourself." "Thank you," Renee said. Outside, she checked her app. The current balance still said $32.11. Below that, in smaller text, "Pending deposit, 50 roars." She took a screenshot, sent it to Rachel. A string of shocked emojis came back. Then, "It's real." Renee let out a half sob, half laugh right there on the sidewalk. Maya tugged at her hand. "Mama, can we get ice cream?" Renee looked down at her daughter's hopeful face. For 3 years, she'd had to say no to almost every extra. No to ice cream. No to toys. No to random little joys that other kids seemed to take for granted. Today, she thought, maybe the answer could be different. "Yeah, baby," she said. "Today we can get ice cream." Maya gasped. "Really? Really?" They walked to a small ice cream shop 2 blocks away, the kind of place Renee usually avoided because $5 for a cone felt irresponsible. "Mama, I want sprinkles," Maya announced at the counter. "Sprinkles it is," Renee said. She watched her daughter's face light up as she took the first lick of her chocolate-sprinkled cone. The sheer joy in that expression made something inside Renee soften and ache at the same time. "Do you want some?" Maya asked generously, holding it out. "I'll get my own," Renee said, surprising herself. She ordered a single scoop of vanilla in a cup. It wasn't fancy. But it was for her. Not leftovers. Not shared from Maya's cone. Her own small treat. It tasted like possibility. That afternoon, after dropping Maya at daycare for a few hours, Renee sat at her small table with a notebook and a pen. No restaurant noise, no bills, just a blank page waiting. At the top, she wrote, "What do I really want?" The first answers were practical. Pay daycare current, pay electric, pay rent for the next 3 months, start an emergency fund, move to a safer neighborhood. Then, further down, the answers got softer. Take Maya to the zoo, sign her up for a dance class, buy a real bed for her, a couch that doesn't sink in the middle, and then, at the bottom of the page, she wrote one word: school. She stared at it. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her heart jumped. She answered. Hello? Renee, it's David. She sat up straighter. Hi. Hi. Is this still a good time? He asked. Or did I catch you in the middle of a shift? No, I'm off today, she said. Maya's at daycare for a few hours. Good, he said. I didn't want to interrupt work or mom duty. I just wanted to check in, make sure you got the check deposited, make sure there were no issues. It's pending, she said. They said a few days. Standard, he said. Once it clears, it's fully yours. Thank you, she said again, knowing it was inadequate. You don't have to thank me every time we talk, he replied gently. You can, but it's not a requirement. She smiled despite her nerves. I talked to my friend and to Maya's daycare provider. They both said I should talk to you again before I make any big decisions. That's wise, he said. Would you like to meet somewhere? Sit down properly and go through options? Yes, she said, surprising herself with how quickly the word came. Do you have a favorite coffee shop? He asked. Renee blinked. A favorite coffee shop? Was that a trick question? He chuckled softly. Right. Fair enough. There's a place on Willow and 3rd called Harbor Brew. Low-key, not fancy. Good coffee. Tomorrow at 10? Okay, she said. Bring your questions, he said. And bring your honest thoughts. This isn't about what I think you should do. It's about what you want. After they hung up, Renee stared at the notebook again. She flipped to a fresh page and wrote at the top, Questions for David. She wrote, What does the manager job actually involve? Hours? Salary? Benefits? Can I do school and work? How long before promotion? Childcare help? Will I have support or be thrown in? Is this for real? She scratched that last one out. It sounded ungrateful, but the doubt lingered. The next morning she dressed with more thought than usual. Not work clothes, not jeans and a hoodie. Black slacks that fit well. A soft blue blouse she'd bought on clearance and never worn because she'd always been too tired for anything that wasn't cotton and forgiving. She let her hair out of its usual bun and shaped it, her curls forming a soft halo around her face, a little mascara, a bit of lip balm. When she looked in the mirror, she saw herself, but a version that felt closer to who she used to be before everything became about survival. At Harbor Brew, David was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 mugs in front of him. He stood when she walked in. Renee, he said, smiling. Hi, she replied, suddenly aware of every step she took toward him. I got you a latte, he said, gesturing to the mug. I took a wild guess. If you hate it, we can get you something else. She wrapped her hands around the warm ceramic. It's perfect. Thank you. The coffee shop was busy but not loud. People with laptops, a couple on a date, an older man reading a newspaper. It felt neutral. Safe. How are you feeling? He asked. Overwhelmed, she admitted. Grateful, scared, all of it at once. That sounds about right, he said. She opened her notebook. I made questions. Good, he said, genuinely pleased. Let's go through them. For the next hour, they talked. He explained the manager role in detail. It wasn't just seating people and handling complaints. It was scheduling staff, overseeing inventory, dealing with vendors, making sure health codes were followed, supporting servers, being the bridge between the owner and the floor. The starting salary is $72,000, he said, with health insurance, a retirement plan, and performance bonuses. Renee tried not to react audibly, but her heart thudded. $72,000, almost 3 times what she made now, even with good tips. The hours will be long at first, he continued, especially during opening. But you'd have 2 fixed days off a week. We can work those around your childcare as much as possible. And I'm not throwing you into the deep end. You'd shadow an experienced manager at another location for 3 months before opening. What about school? She asked quietly. He didn't flinch. You want to do nursing? Yes, she said. At least, I did. Still do, I think. There are ways to do both, he said. Online classes, night programs. It'll be hard, I won't lie. But it's possible. We can structure your schedule to block certain times for classes if you commit. I did night school and full-time work for years. I know it's brutal, but I also know it can be done. You think I can do that? She asked. I think you've been doing the impossible for 3 years, he said. Doing school with a stable income and support will be hard, but not impossible. The question isn't, can you? It's, do you want to? She was quiet. Why nursing? He asked. Renee told him. About her mother in the hospital. The nurse who'd sat with them when the doctor left. The way she'd explained things without talking down. The way her hands had been kind. How someone treats you when you're vulnerable sticks, Renee said. I want to be that person for someone else. David listened. Really listened. You have the empathy, he said. You have the work ethic. Those are the hardest parts to teach. Everything else is training. They covered childcare next. He took notes as she talked about daycare hours, backup sitters, Miss Patricia. We have options, he said. I can't solve everything. I'm your employer, not your savior. But I can be flexible where I have power. He said it without condescension, just fact. That sentence stuck with her. I'm your employer, not your savior. It made this feel less like a fairy tale and more like a grown-up decision. At the end of their talk, he leaned back and folded his hands. I don't need an answer today, he said. Take a week. Talk to whoever you trust. Think. Pray, if that's your thing. This is your life. I'm offering a door. You decide if you walk through it. She nodded, feeling both lighter and heavier. Can I ask you something? She said. Of course. What if I say no? To which part? He asked. To the job, she said. To management. What if I just use the money to get stable and stay a server? Or go to school full-time, or I don't even know. But what if I don't want that path? Then I shake your hand, he said simply. And thank you for your honesty. The money stays yours. The opportunity shifts to someone else. No resentment. No anger. I meant it when I said there are no strings attached to that check. The job offer is a separate thing. She exhaled slowly. That actually makes it less scary. Good, he said, because fear makes us say yes to things we shouldn't, just as much as it makes us say no to things we should. Renee smiled faintly. That's wise, he shrugged. I've made a lot of mistakes. You learn things. They finished their coffee. When she left, she didn't have a decision yet, but she had something she hadn't had in a long time. Time, room, options. On the bus home, she watched people. A woman in scrubs, clearly just off a long shift. A teenager with a beat-up backpack and headphones. An older man in a security guard uniform, eyes closed, nodding off. She wondered how many of them had doors in front of them they couldn't see, or noticed them but were too tired to consider walking through. That night, after she put Maya to bed, she sat back at the table. She drew 2 columns. Left, take the manager job. Right, focus on school. Under manager, she wrote, more money now, stability, benefits, leadership experience, time away from Maya, stress, responsibility. Under school, she wrote, long-term career, helping people, less money now, more debt, juggling work and classes. She tapped the pen against the paper. What if it's not either or, she whispered to herself. What if it was both, and? The idea made her dizzy. She pictured a future where she was not just surviving, but thriving, in a position of responsibility, in school. A daughter watching her mother study at the table at night and thinking, "That's normal. That's what we do. We grow." She pictured telling Maya, "Mama's going to be a nurse one day." Tears filled her eyes. For once, they weren't from exhaustion or fear. They were from the terrifying, beautiful possibility that this could be her life, not just as a fantasy, as a plan. She picked up her phone, texted David. "I'd like to try the manager job and school, if the offer still stands." The dots appeared on the screen, disappeared, appeared again. "Of course it still stands. Welcome to your next chapter, Renee. We'll figure it out together." Her next chapter. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't just turning pages written by someone else's choices. She was writing her own. If you've ever had your options limited by money, time, or fear, you know how overwhelming it is when a real door suddenly opens. It's not just exciting, it's scary. In the next part of this story, we'll walk with Renee through the messy middle: training, mistakes, doubt, mom guilt, and the moment she almost walks away from it all. If you're still here, still watching, still feeling this with her, hit that like button so this story can reach more people who need a little hope. And let me know in the comments, if someone handed you the resources to change your life, what's the first thing you'd do? The first 3 weeks of Renee's new life felt like living in someone else's dream. The check cleared on a Tuesday morning. She was sitting at the small table in her apartment, Maya beside her coloring with broken crayons, when her phone buzzed with the notification. She opened the banking app and stared at the screen for a full minute. Her breath caught somewhere between her lungs and her throat. Available balance, $50,032.11. She'd kept the original $32 and change, watching the two numbers sit side by side, like proof that both versions of her life were real. The one where she counted pennies for bus fare, and the one where she had enough breathing room to think past tomorrow. Maya looked up from her drawing. "Mama, why you crying?" Renee wiped her face quickly. "Happy tears, baby. Just happy tears." "Can happy tears buy me a new doll?" Renee laughed through the wetness on her cheeks. "Maybe soon, princess. Maybe soon." The next day, she met with a financial advisor David had recommended, a woman named Claudia Martinez, mid-40s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense approach that reminded Renee of Miss Patricia. They sat in Claudia's small office on the 3rd floor of a building downtown, the kind of place with motivational posters on the walls and a water cooler that hummed too loud. But Claudia's desk was organized, her questions direct, and her advice grounded in reality instead of fantasy. "First rule," Claudia said, pulling out a yellow legal pad. "Do not tell everyone you know about this money. People mean well. But suddenly, everyone has an emergency. Everyone has a business idea. Everyone needs help. You protect yourself by keeping this quiet." Renee nodded. She'd already learned that the hard way. She'd mentioned the check in passing to a cousin she barely talked to, and within 2 days, the cousin had texted asking for a loan to get back on her feet. Renee had said no, felt guilty, then remembered Rachel's voice in her head. "Your daughter comes first, always." "Second rule," Claudia continued, writing as she spoke. "We build a foundation before we build a house. That means emergency fund first, then debt, then goals." Over the next hour, they mapped it out on paper. 6 months of expenses into a high-yield savings account, untouchable except for true emergencies. That came to roughly $12,000, accounting for rent, utilities, food, daycare, and a small buffer. Next, clearing the debts. Renee's credit card balance was $2,800, accumulated over 2 years of emergencies that were really just shortfalls between paychecks. The overdue electric bill, the past due daycare fees, the medical bill from when Maya had an ear infection, and Renee didn't have insurance. All told, about $4,500 in debt. Paying it off in one sweep felt surreal. "You're going to feel lighter," Claudia said, watching Renee's face. "Physically lighter. Debt sits on you like weight. When it's gone, you'll notice." She was right. The day Renee logged into her accounts and saw zeros across the board, no balances owed, no past due notices, no red numbers screaming at her, she sat on her couch and cried so hard she scared Maya. "Mama?" Maya's small hand patted her cheek. "You sad?" "No, baby," Renee managed. "I'm free." Maya didn't understand, but she hugged her mother anyway, her little arms tight around Renee's neck, and that was enough. With the foundation set, Claudia helped her plan the next steps: a portion into a college fund for Maya, a portion into Renee's own education fund for nursing school. The remainder stayed accessible for moving costs, furniture, and the inevitable expenses that came with starting a new job and a new life. "You're doing this right," Claudia said at the end of their session, shaking Renee's hand. "A lot of people get a windfall, and it's gone in 6 months because they don't have a plan. You have a plan. Stick to it." Renee left that office feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Control. Not over everything. Life was still unpredictable, still hard, still full of variables she couldn't manage. But over her immediate circumstances, over the next few months, over whether the lights stayed on and her daughter ate well, yes, she had control. The management training started the following Monday. David had arranged for Renee to shadow Michelle Torres, the floor manager at one of his other locations, a upscale bistro called Harborview, about 30 minutes from Renee's apartment by bus. Michelle was in her early 50s, a woman with silver streaks in her dark hair, sharp eyes, and the kind of presence that made people listen without her having to raise her voice. On Renee's first day, Michelle met her at the staff entrance with a firm handshake and an appraising look. "David says you're good people," Michelle said. "That you've been serving for 3 years, and you know the floor." "Yes, ma'am," Renee replied. "Don't call me ma'am," Michelle said, but she was smiling. "Makes me feel ancient. Michelle is fine. Let's get you started." The first week was overwhelming. Renee had thought she understood restaurants because she'd worked in them. But working as a server and managing the entire operation were two completely different animals. Michelle walked her through everything. Scheduling, making sure shifts were covered without overworking people, balancing seniority with new hires, handling last-minute call-outs without letting the floor fall apart. Inventory, tracking what came in, what went out, what got wasted, what got stolen. Everything had a cost, and those costs added up fast. Vendor relations, dealing with food suppliers, linen services, equipment repair companies, negotiating prices, holding people accountable when deliveries were late or quality was poor. Staff management, the hardest part. Hiring, training, motivating, disciplining when necessary, firing when someone crossed a line. "You're going to have to make hard calls," Michelle told her one afternoon as they reviewed an incident report from the previous night. A server had shown up drunk. Michelle had sent him home and was in the process of deciding whether to terminate him or give him one final warning. "What would you do?" Michelle asked Renee. Renee thought about it. "I'd want to give him another chance," she admitted. "Everyone messes up." "True," Michelle said. "But this isn't his first time. It's his third. At some point, compassion becomes enabling. If I let him stay, and he shows up drunk again and makes a mistake that gets someone hurt, that's on me." She let that sit. "Management isn't about being liked," Michelle continued. "It's about being fair. Sometimes fair means second chances. Sometimes it means showing someone the door so they hit rock bottom and hopefully get the help they need. You have to know the difference. Renee absorbed that, the weight of it settling into her bones. This wasn't just about knowing how to work a floor or charm a customer. This was about responsibility for other people's livelihoods, for the business's reputation, for safety and standards, and 100 small decisions every day that could make or break someone's experience, staff or customer. By the end of the second week, Renee's head was spinning. She came home every night exhausted in a new way. Not physically, though her feet still hurt, but mentally. The sheer volume of information she had to absorb felt impossible some days. One evening, she sat at her kitchen table with her notebook open, trying to study the staff handbook Michelle had given her. But the words blurred together. Policies, procedures, codes, standards. Maya tugged at her sleeve. "Mama, play with me." "Not right now, baby," Renee said, not looking up. "Mama has to study." "You always studying," Maya said, her voice small. The words hit like a slap. Renee looked up. Maya stood there in her pajamas, holding her stuffed giraffe, her bottom lip trembling. Guilt crashed over Renee in a wave so strong she thought she might drown in it. She closed the notebook and pulled Maya into her lap. "I'm sorry, baby. You're right. Mama's been working a lot. I miss you," Maya whispered into her shoulder. "I miss you too," Renee said, her throat tight. "I'm trying to build us a better life, you know? So we can have nice things. So you can have your own room one day. So Mama doesn't have to be so tired all the time." "I don't need nice things," Maya said. "I just need you." Renee held her daughter and cried quietly, rocking her gently. This was the cost no one talked about. The trade-off. More opportunity meant more time away. More responsibility meant more stress brought home. More future security meant less present availability. She wanted to give Maya everything. But right now, all Maya wanted was her mother's attention, and Renee was running out of it. That night, after Maya was asleep, Renee called Rachel. "I don't know if I can do this," she said, her voice breaking. "Do what?" Rachel asked gently. "All of it. The training. The job. School starts in 2 months, and I haven't even registered yet because, I keep putting it off because I'm scared I'm going to fail. And Maya's starting to resent me because I'm never fully present even when I'm home. And I feel like I'm failing at everything." Rachel was quiet for a moment. "You're not failing," she said finally. "You're adjusting. There's a difference. It doesn't feel like adjusting. It feels like drowning." "I know," Rachel said. "But here's the thing. 3 months ago, you were drowning in a different way. You were working yourself to death for scraps, barely keeping your head above water, with no end in sight. Now you're drowning in opportunity, which sucks in its own way, but it's temporary. This part, the learning curve, the overwhelm, it passes. What you're building doesn't." Renee wiped her eyes. "What if I'm not smart enough for this?" "Stop," Rachel said firmly. "Do not insult my best friend like that. You are brilliant. You've kept a whole human alive on poverty wages while working full-time. You've navigated systems designed to keep people like us down. You've learned every aspect of fine dining from the ground up. You are more than smart enough. You're just scared. And that's okay. Scared doesn't mean incapable." "I feel like I'm losing Maya," Renee whispered. "You're not losing her," Rachel said. "You're teaching her. She's watching you fight for something better. She's seeing her mother refuse to settle. One day, she's going to understand that." "What if one day is too late?" "It won't be," Rachel said, "because you're going to make time. You're going to set boundaries. You're going to tell Michelle and David that you need certain hours blocked off for your daughter, non-negotiable. They'll respect that. And if they don't, then this job isn't worth it." Renee took a shaky breath. "You really think I can do this?" I know you can, Rachel said. But more importantly, you need to know you can. The next day, Renee had a conversation with Michelle. I need to talk about scheduling, Renee said during their afternoon check-in. Michelle looked up from her clipboard. Okay, what's on your mind? I have a 3-year-old daughter, Renee said, and I'm realizing that if I'm going to do this job, I need certain boundaries. I can't work nights that conflict with bedtime more than 2 days a week. I can't do early mornings that mean I miss breakfast with her. I need flexibility, and I know that's asking a lot, but I also know that if I burn out or lose my relationship with my kid, I won't be any good to this restaurant either. She held her breath, waiting for pushback. Michelle set down her clipboard. Thank you for telling me, she said. Renee blinked. That's it? That's it, Michelle said. Look, I've managed enough people to know that the ones who set boundaries early are the ones who last. The ones who try to be everything to everyone burn out in 6 months and leave me scrambling to replace them. You telling me what you need means we can plan around it. I respect that. Renee felt tears prick her eyes again. Really? Really, Michelle said. We'll work it out. I'm not saying it'll always be perfect. There will be nights you have to stay late. There will be emergencies. But we build a schedule that protects your time with your daughter as much as possible. Deal? Deal, Renee said, relief flooding through her. That evening, she left training early, Michelle's suggestion, and picked Maya up from daycare with enough time to take her to the park. They sat on the swings together, Maya giggling every time Renee pushed her higher. Mama, look! I'm flying! Maya shouted, her curls bouncing in the wind. Renee watched her daughter's face, full of pure, uncomplicated joy, and felt something click back into place inside her chest. This was why she was doing all of it. Not for money. Not for a title. For moments like this. For a future where she didn't have to choose between paying rent and taking her daughter to the park. For a life where maybe became yes. 3 months into training, Renee started to feel the rhythm. She learned how to read a dining room at a glance, which tables needed attention, which servers were in the weeds, which customers were about to complain before they even opened their mouths. She learned how to de-escalate conflicts. A customer furious about an overcooked steak became a conversation about making it right, offering a replacement, comping a dessert, turning anger into satisfaction. She learned how to support her staff without micromanaging, checking in without hovering, correcting mistakes without shaming. She learned how to juggle 10 things at once and still smile. And slowly, she started to believe she could actually do this. One night, Michelle pulled her aside after a particularly brutal dinner rush. You handled that well, Michelle said. The guy who tried to walk out without paying, Renee asked. Yeah. You stayed calm, got the situation under control, didn't make a scene. That's management. Renee felt a flush of pride. I was terrified. Good, Michelle said. Means you're paying attention. The day you stop being a little bit scared is the day you get sloppy. A week later, Michelle told her something that made her heart nearly stop. David's coming by tomorrow, Michelle said casually, while they were reviewing the next week's schedule. Okay, Renee said, trying to keep her voice even. He wants to observe you on the floor, Michelle added. See how you're doing. Don't stress. Just do what you've been doing. Easier said than done. That night, Renee barely slept. David Morrison was coming to watch her work. The man who'd given her $50,000 and a chance at a completely different life was going to see whether she was worth the investment. What if she messed up? What if she froze? What if he realized he'd made a mistake? The next evening, she arrived at Harborview an hour early, double-checked everything, and tried to calm her racing heart. David arrived at 6:30, just as the dinner service was starting to pick up. He didn't announce himself. He just slipped in through the front entrance like any other customer, took a seat at the bar, and ordered a glass of water. Renee spotted him immediately. Their eyes met across the room. He gave her a small nod. No pressure, just acknowledgement. She took a breath and dove into the shift. It was a busy night. A party of 12 with complicated dietary restrictions. A proposal at table 8 that required coordinating with the kitchen for a special dessert. A broken espresso machine that meant drinks were delayed. A new server who was clearly overwhelmed and needed guidance. Renee moved through it all. She guided the new server through her first big table with patience and clear instructions. She coordinated the proposal dessert, made sure it came out exactly when the couple needed it, and even got the whole dining room to applaud when the woman said yes. She handled the 12 top with grace, making notes of every allergy and preference, ensuring the kitchen got it right. And when the espresso machine finally sputtered back to life, she personally made drinks for the tables that had been waiting, apologizing for the delay and comping their coffees. By the end of the night, she was exhausted. But she'd done it. No catastrophes, no meltdowns, just solid, steady work. Michelle found her in the back office at the end of the shift. "David wants to talk to you," she said. Renee's stomach flipped. "Is that good or bad?" Michelle smiled. "Go find out." David was still at the bar, nursing the same glass of water. Renee approached slowly. "Hi," she said. "Hi," he replied, turning to face her fully. "You have a minute?" "Of course." They moved to a quieter corner near the host stand. "You did well tonight," David said. Renee waited for the but. It didn't come. "I watched you manage 3 different crises without breaking a sweat," he continued. "I watched you support a new employee instead of getting frustrated with her mistakes. I watched you turn a potentially angry table into a happy one. That's not something you can teach in a manual. That's instinct. That's care." Renee felt her throat tighten. "Thank you." "I think you're ready," David said. "Ready for what?" "For the new location," he said. "We're opening in 6 weeks. I want you as floor manager." Renee stared at him. 6 weeks. Floor manager. Her own restaurant. She didn't know what to say. "You don't have to answer right now," David said. "But I wanted you to know. You've earned this. Not because I gave you money. Not because I felt sorry for you. Because you've proven you can do the work." Renee nodded, unable to speak. "There's one more thing," David added. "The salary we discussed? 72,000? Yes? I'm bumping it to 80, he said. "You're worth it." Renee's eyes filled with tears. $80,000. A year ago, she'd been scraping together tips to buy diapers. Now she was being offered more money than she'd ever imagined making. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for seeing me." David's expression softened. "You made yourself easy to see, Renee. All I did was pay attention." That night, Renee didn't go straight home. She took the bus to Rachel's apartment and knocked on the door at nearly 11 p.m. Rachel opened it in pajamas, her hair wrapped, her face creased with concern. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," Renee said, and then she started crying. "Everything's right. Everything's so right, I don't know what to do with it." Rachel pulled her inside. Over tea and leftover pizza, Renee told her everything. The training, the fear, the conversation with Michelle, David's visit, the offer. $80,000, Rachel repeated slowly. As in 80,000. "Yes," Renee said. Rachel set down her mug. Then she stood up, walked around the table, and pulled Renee into the tightest hug she'd given in years. "I'm so proud of you," Rachel said into her hair. "So unbelievably proud." Renee cried into her best friend's shoulder, releasing months of fear and pressure and disbelief. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "Good," Rachel said. "You should be. This is big. This is life-changing. But you're ready. You've been ready." What if I mess it up? Then you'll fix it, Rachel said simply. That's what you do. You fix things. You figure it out. You keep going. That's who you've always been. Renee pulled back, wiping her face. I need to register for school. Rachel's eyes widened. You're doing both? I'm doing both, Renee said, feeling the decision solidify as she said it out loud. I'm managing the restaurant, and I'm going to nursing school. It's going to be hell, but I'm doing it. Then let's make a plan, Rachel said, grabbing her laptop. They spent the next 2 hours researching nursing programs, online options, night classes, accelerated tracks, programs that worked with adults who had full-time jobs and children. By the time Renee left Rachel's apartment at 1 in the morning, she had a list of 3 schools to apply to and a timeline that actually seemed possible. Exhausting. Brutal. But possible. The next 6 weeks were a blur. Renee finished her training with Michelle, who wrote her a glowing recommendation and told her, "You're going to be one of the best." She applied to nursing school and was accepted into an evening program that would start in the fall. 18 months to get her RN if she passed everything on schedule. She found a new apartment. Not huge, not fancy, but 2 bedrooms in a safer neighborhood with a small park 2 blocks away and a good elementary school nearby for when Maya was old enough. The movers came on a Saturday. Rachel and Miss Patricia helped. Maya ran through the empty new apartment shrieking with joy at having her own room. "Mama, Mama, look! My room is pink!" It wasn't pink. The walls were beige. But Renee had bought pink curtains and a pink bedspread. And to Maya, that was enough. That night, after everything was unpacked and Maya was asleep in her new bed, surrounded by stuffed animals, Renee stood in the small living room and just breathed. This was hers. Not borrowed. Not rented month to month with the threat of eviction hanging over her head. Hers. Stable. Safe. She pulled out her phone and took a picture of the empty living room, the boxes still stacked in the corner, the soft glow of the lamp she'd bought at a thrift store. She sent it to David with a simple message. "Thank you for believing in me before I believed in myself." His response came a few minutes later. "You did this. I just held the door open. Congratulations on your new home." The restaurant opened on a warm Thursday evening in late September. The sign above the door read, "Bloom." David had chosen the name carefully. "A place where things grow," he'd said, "where people are nurtured, where new beginnings happen." Renee stood inside the empty dining room the day before opening, taking it all in. The tables were set with crisp white linens. The chairs were a soft charcoal gray. The walls were painted a warm, gentle cream with touches of sage green. Soft pendant lights hung from the ceiling, casting a golden glow over everything. It was beautiful, and it was hers to manage. "You ready?" Michelle asked, appearing beside her. She'd come to help with the final training and opening preparations. "I think so," Renee said. "You've got this," Michelle said. "Trust your training. Trust your instincts. And remember, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to care. The rest will follow." Opening night was chaos. Reservations overbooked. The computer system glitching. A batch of scallops arriving undercooked from the kitchen. A customer allergic to something not listed on the menu. A server spilling wine on a very expensive dress. But Renee handled it. Every single piece. She worked the room, greeted guests, checked in with her staff, solved problems before they became catastrophes. By the end of the night, her feet ached, and her voice was hoarse. But they'd done it. The restaurant had survived its first service. David appeared near closing, slipping in quietly to observe. When the last table finally paid and left, he walked over to where Renee stood near the host stand, reviewing the night's numbers. "How do you feel?" he asked. Renee looked up, exhausted but smiling. "Like I just ran a marathon." "Good," he said. "That means you cared. How were the numbers?" She showed him the tablet. Reservations filled. Positive feedback from most tables. A few hiccups, but nothing catastrophic. Tips were good, which meant the staff was happy. "Not bad for night one," David said. "Not bad at all," Renee agreed. He looked at her for a long moment. "You know what I see when I look at you now?" "What?" "A manager," he said simply. "Not someone pretending, not someone scared, just someone doing the job." Renee felt her chest tighten. "I'm still scared sometimes." "That's okay," David said. "Fear keeps you sharp. But you're not letting it stop you anymore. That's the difference." He was right. A year ago, fear had been her constant companion. Fear of failure. Fear of instability. Fear of not being enough for Maya. Fear of dreaming because dreams felt dangerous when survival was the priority. Now, she still felt fear, but she also felt capable. 3 months into managing Bloom, Renee hit her stride. The restaurant was thriving. Staff turnover was low because she'd learned from Michelle how to treat people well, how to create a culture where showing up mattered, and mistakes were learning opportunities instead of fireable offenses. Customers were returning. Reviews were positive. The kitchen and the floor worked in harmony most nights, and Renee had started nursing school. 2 nights a week after closing the restaurant, she went home, kissed a sleeping Maya, and sat at her kitchen table with textbooks and notes, studying anatomy and pharmacology and patient care until her eyes blurred. It was brutal. Some nights she cried from exhaustion. Some nights she wondered if she was insane for trying to do both. But some nights, when she finally understood a concept she'd been struggling with, or when she aced a quiz, or when her professor told her she had a gift for patient communication, she felt something bigger than tiredness. She felt pride. One evening, 6 months into her new life, Renee was closing the restaurant when a familiar face walked in. A woman in her mid-30s, black, with tired eyes and a nervous smile. She approached the host stand. "Hi, I know you're about to close. I'm sorry. I heard about this place and I wanted to see it." Renee smiled. "It's okay. Can I help you with something?" The woman hesitated. "My name is Shanice. I'm a server at a diner across town. I've been doing it for 8 years. And I heard, someone told me that the manager here used to be a server too, that she got a chance to move up. I just wanted to see if that was true." Renee's heart squeezed. She saw herself in this woman's face, the exhaustion, the hope, the fear of asking for too much. "It's true," Renee said gently. "I was a server for 3 years before this." "How did you do it?" Shanice asked. "How did you get out?" Renee thought about her answer carefully. "I got lucky," she said honestly. "Someone saw me and gave me a chance I didn't expect. But luck isn't the whole story. I also worked hard. I stayed consistent. I treated people well even when I was tired and broke, and didn't think anyone was watching. And when the opportunity came, I didn't let fear talk me out of it." Shanice nodded slowly. "I want that. I want a chance." Renee pulled out one of her business cards. "We're not hiring for management right now," she said. "But we are hiring servers. And if you're interested, I'd love to talk to you about joining our team. I can't promise you'll become a manager, but I can promise you'll be treated with respect. And if you work hard and show up consistently, I'll notice. I'll invest in you, because someone did that for me." Shanice took the card with shaking hands. "Thank you." "Email me," Renee said. "We'll set up an interview." After Shanice left, Renee stood in the quiet restaurant. The lights dimmed, the tables reset for tomorrow. She thought about Table 14 at Meridian Heights, about the envelope under the plate, about the note. I wanted to see who you were when you thought no one was watching, and she realized something profound. She was becoming the person who watched, not to judge, but to notice. To see the Renees of the world working quietly in corners, hoping someone would recognize their worth. And when she saw them, she wouldn't just leave a check, she'd leave a door open. 2 years later, Renee stood in a hospital conference room wearing scrubs for the first time. She'd graduated from nursing school 3 months earlier, passing her boards on the first try. The restaurant was still thriving under her management, but she'd transitioned to part-time consulting, training new managers for David's growing company. Her primary job now was what she'd always dreamed of: RN at City General Hospital, working in the emergency department. It was chaotic. It was exhausting. It was everything she'd hoped for. On her first shift, she'd held the hand of a terrified mother whose child had been in a car accident, whispering, "I'm right here. You're not alone," and watched the woman's panic ease just a little. That night, she'd gone home and cried, not from sadness, from purpose. Maya was 5 now, in kindergarten, thriving in her new school. She talked about being a doctor when she grew up, sometimes a teacher, sometimes a scientist who makes unicorns. Renee didn't care what she became. She just wanted her daughter to know that dreams weren't luxuries. They were possibilities you worked toward. One Saturday afternoon, Renee took Maya to the park near their apartment. While Maya played on the swings, Renee sat on a bench and pulled out her phone. She scrolled to an old message thread. David. They still texted occasionally. Updates on the restaurant. Congratulations on milestones. Gratitude on both sides. She typed a new message. I start my 2nd week as a nurse on Monday. I wanted to say thank you again. Not just for the money or the job, but for seeing me, for believing I was worth the investment. I'm paying it forward every day. I hope that makes you proud. His response came quickly. I've been proud of you since the night you cleared that table with grace after getting a $0 tip. Everything since then has just been you, proving what I already knew. Keep going. Keep growing. Keep being exactly who you are. Renee smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks. She looked up and saw Maya running toward her, arms wide. Mama, watch me do the monkey bars. I'm watching, baby, Renee called. And she was. Not just watching her daughter play, but watching a life unfold that she'd built with her own hands. A life where $50,000 had opened a door, but her own courage had walked through it. Where one man's decision to notice had sparked a chain reaction of growth and opportunity and grace. Where a single mother who'd once counted pennies for bus fare now helped other people find their footing. Where a woman who'd been invisible for so long finally stood in the light, and she wasn't afraid of it anymore. Renee's story didn't end with a check under a plate. It ended with her becoming the kind of person who left opportunities under plates for others. It ended with a little girl who grew up watching her mother fight for something better and learned that dreams weren't just for other people. It ended with a man named David Morrison, who understood that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do with wealth isn't buy things. It's buy someone time, space, and belief in themselves. And it ended with a lesson we all need to hear. Character revealed in small moments creates opportunities in big ones. The way you treat people when you think no one important is watching. Someone is always watching. And sometimes that someone has the power to change your life. Not because you performed, not because you begged, but because you were consistent, because you were kind, because you showed up as yourself and refused to let circumstances steal your dignity. Renee Johnson didn't win a lottery. She earned a second look. And that second look became a second chance. And that second chance became a completely different life. If this story touched you, if it reminded you that hard work and character matter, if it gave you hope that doors can open when you least expect them, share it. Tell someone who needs to hear that they're not invisible, that their struggle is seen, that their consistency will pay off, maybe not today, but someday. Hit that like button. Subscribe so you never miss stories that celebrate real people doing hard things with grace. And drop a comment telling me, what's one thing you've kept doing even when no one seemed to notice? Because I promise you, someone is watching, and your consistency is building something bigger than you realize. Thank you for walking through Renee's story with me. Her fight is over, but yours might just be beginning. And if a single mom with $32 in her account can build a life worth celebrating, so can you. Keep going. Keep showing up. Keep being exactly who you are when you think no one important is watching, because you never know who's sitting at table 14.